Everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Cabinet on the 21st of January. Happy New Year to all of you. We'll go first to apologies for absence, please. Mr. Evans, do we have any?
I've had no apologies.
Okay. We'll move then to disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests. Are there any interests that any members or officers wish to declare? Councillor Rayner?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, it's item 8, appointment of local authority school governors. I have dispensation from the Standards Committee to stay and speak, but not to vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any others? I don't see any. Okay, thank you. We'll move on then to the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 1 to 8. I've not been notified of any changes or amendments or errors. Can I then have somebody to move, please?
Happy to move.
Okay, and a seconder, please.
Happy to second.
Okay, everybody happy to accept the minutes?
Aye.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, thank you very much. Announcement of Leader of the Council, only really to reiterate that we continue to make significant progress in terms of the rollout of the vaccines across the Swansea University Bay Health Board area. Could I ask all members to mute, please, if you can? I know there's a bit of interference coming on, so could you please remember to be on mute? Thank you. We are continuing to make significant progress with the rollout of the vaccine. We have 3 max vaccination centres online as of the middle of this week, and obviously 49 GP surgeries will be active as of this week, all of whom will be focused on getting as much of the vaccine out to the vulnerable groups in groups 1 to 4 as quickly as possible. We also have a mobile unit online shortly to help to vaccinate people in their own homes where they can't get to a vaccination centre or GP surgery, and that will be active in the next week. It's currently finalising its fit out. So a good position. We were over 21,000 vaccinations yesterday. And obviously, alongside that, we are continuing to see a steady decrease in the infection rate and the positivity rate across Swansea and East Port Talbot and across Wales, all of which is very good. But that does need to be continually sustained for the next few weeks in order for us to be in a position whereby obviously the Welsh Government could then look to review whether we should remain in alert level 4 or move to a lower tier. But all of the indicators at the present time are good. Obviously, the vaccination rollout will continue to increase in pace and capacity over the next few weeks. And the aim is still to complete groups 1 to 4 by the middle of February, and then groups 5 to 9 by early spring. So again, obviously a great national effort being pushed into this, and I just want to pay tribute to all of those in the NHS, the volunteers who've rejoined, and all of those helping to vaccinate, test, and keep people safe during this period. I'll move now to public question time. I know we've had a number of public questions submitted. I'll go to Mr. Evans for the order in terms of members of the public. So, Mr. Evans, who do we have first, please?
Can I call on Jason Williams to ask his questions first, please?
Hi,
Okay,
thanks,
Mr. Williams, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thanks, Cabinet, for your time. It really is appreciated. I'm speaking as chair of the Mumble Skatepark Association, which has been established to support and represent the community in favour of the redevelopment of the current Llanderw site to provide a new concrete skate park fit for all abilities and accessible to all. So all my questions relate to item 12 on the agenda, the proposed lease of Mumble's Community Council under the Community Asset Transfer Policy. And also, I'd just like to say apologies to anyone who attended scrutiny, because there may be some duplication with my questions from Tuesday. So if you've got to sit through them, I do apologise. We're mindful of the strong support for the redevelopment of the Llanderw site from skateboard, BMX and scooter communities, amongst others, and the concerns raised regarding the timescale of process so far. We're also aware that coming out of lockdown, the community will be keen to take advantage of facilities and pastimes they've not been able to enjoy for some time. Assuming the proposal to transfer the land is approved, what would be the anticipated timescale for the lease to be signed across to enable the redevelopment to begin in earnest?
Cabinet member to respond, please.
Yeah, could I come in first on this one? It's What I would say is, it's taken a long time to get here. I think the process has been long, but it's got to the right conclusion, in my opinion. It's a very ambitious programme by the Mumble Community Council, and I'm really, really excited by it. What I would have thought that, obviously we've got to this stage. I would hope that, I know that there's going to be probably grant timescales that the Mumble Community Council will have to meet. And I would hope that we would get this brought to conclusion as soon as possible. If you look at one of the recommendations, the recommendation asks for a delegated decision to the Director of Place, which then would not, there shouldn't be any further delays in having a further cabinet meeting or any other type of meeting to things. So I'm hopeful that there will be that it'll be done as soon as practically possible.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Francis Davis, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I would hope that it will proceed as quickly as possible. I think all the work has been carried out almost now because of the consultation in public open space, etc. We have a report which is probably unprecedented in asset transfer of 315 pages. And I would hope that the same due diligence will go into every other asset transfer in future as well. It's public land. We are public servants in that we have got to make sure that we carry it out in the right legal procedure, that we have got to make sure that what we are doing has been fully consulted with. And I think the report, the 315 pages, show that people have been consulted with. This is an application by the Mumbles Community Council, and therefore, should this go through today, I'm sure that it will be expedited quickly, because it would appear that all the work is being now carried out, other than getting the legal document together.
Thank you both. Just before I come back to our questioners, just to say, I mean, obviously, if you don't ask questions at Cabinet or Council on a regular basis, you may think that some of the answers are not as firm as you would like. That is because Cabinet have not taken the decision yet, and we've got to be mindful that we can't absolutely say that we will support or we won't support until we've taken the decision. So it's just a matter of keeping that in mind. And I know the same point was made at scrutiny earlier this week. Mr. Williams, any further questions from yourself?
I fully appreciate that, and I fully appreciate the points made. I understand that the decision is yet to be made, but it's great to hear that if it is positive, then it should be expedited as quickly as possible. Bearing in mind the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and Swansea's A Healthier Wales objective, how does the Cabinet see the lease of the Llanderu site to MCC support these?
Cabinet member to pick that up, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I think under the Future Generations Act, it's absolutely paramount that this goes ahead, in my opinion. I think it's the right thing to do. This will leave a legacy for the people of Swansea, not just the Mumbles. I think it'll be a regional centre of excellence. So I think it's the right thing to do, and I really think that it will leave that firm, I would say, line in the thing to say this is a fantastic thing for the future generations of the city.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Francis Davis.
Look, anything that gets people participating in sport and healthy living has got to be welcomed. I understand the skateboarding is going to be part of the Olympics in future, and that, again, that's to be welcomed. But I would encourage everybody within the city and county of Swansea to participate in, whether it's walking, cycling, playing football, rugby, hockey, skateboarding, swimming. I see Swansea as a sporting city. As you know, leader, we are working with the university on an international sports campus. And what this will give us, I suppose, is applications from all around. I've already had phone calls from people from St Thomas, from Clydach, from Clace, asking for skateboard parks. The problem we will have is having the budget to actually meet the ambitions of everybody throughout Swansea. So, look, it's great. Participation in sport is to be welcomed, and you know, the more strength to everybody, the better in being able to deliver these.
Thank you, Councillor Francis Davis. Mr. Williams, any further questions?
I'll just ask one more, if that's okay. I appreciate Councillor Francis Davis has already made mention of the very comprehensive paper that's come to Cabinet today, the 315 pages. And within that, we're delighted to see that Lloynderra was identified as the optimum site for the proposed skate park, which allows the redevelopment of an already established site in the community as well to serve to encourage increased tourism to the area. Would the Cabinet agree that with the existing links between skateboarding and surfing, and we have BMX and mountain biking, etc., the redevelopment will further enhance Swansea's reputation as a destination for choice for enthusiasts?
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I think in the previous answers, the Cabinet members have already sort of answered that question. So in the interest of time, because I know that we do have two other questioners with a number of questions, I think you've already had a yes to that one and a firm yes. So if you're content with that, Mr. Williams, I'll move on to the next questioners.
Yes, that's great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Evans, who's next?
Yeah, Sarah Keaton is next.
Hi. Basically, I wanted to, you can hear me okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine, go ahead.
I wanted to reiterate the same question I should have asked Jason beforehand, to ask if it goes ahead, could we be assured that it will be as fast as process as we possibly can, so we can get this built for the kids, so when we do come out of lockdown, they've got this fabulous park, and for their mental health and physical well-being, it's very important, more so than ever before when we started this project. And that's it.
And Ms. Keaton, that answer's already been given, and it's an affirmative yes. And I think that the point here is that should Cabinet be minded to support this, then obviously everybody will do what they can to make sure it progresses quickly.
What I would add to that, Leader, it is a yes on the lease, and this is what we are dealing with today. But as regards the speed, it is then this is a Mumbles Community Council project. So the answer is with Mumbles Community Council to make sure that they procure the work, they get on with it and get it done then as quickly as they can. But it's not an answer we as a city council can give, only on the on leases that we can give. But the project is firmly a Mumbles Community Council project. So the answer is with those people who are members of the Mumbles Community Council.
Thank you. Yes, we understand that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Evans, a final questioner.
The final questioner is Pamela Erasmus.
Mr. Erasmus, if you'd like to go ahead.
Good morning. I am mindful of what Robert Francis Davis, Councillor Davis, said in the scrutiny meeting. So because of the pressure of work on Swansea Council's legal department, MC is going to be willing to cover the cost of Swansea instructing an external solicitor with an agreed timescale to draft the lease, because we think that's what we should be doing. We're also applying for a grant, and as you know, part 2 of any grant is time limited. As soon as this council does pass and say yes, there can be a transfer, part 1 of the grant will be going off. So we are mindful that there's a time scale there. It's been widely reported that children and youngsters are finding this pandemic very worrying and are having a hard time dealing with schools and colleges being closed. Skating magazines are reporting huge increases in the sales of skateboards and other wheel sports equipment. Our skate park is a safe place for socially distanced sport and exercise and just plain fun. And Maverick needs to know about this so they can put it into their timetable. So that my question is not a question, we're asking you to expedite it as quickly as you can. Could I take this opportunity, there might be not another chance, to say thank you to all of the officers of City of Swansea, from the first meeting about 3 years ago with Gareth and the guys, right through to this substantial piece of work that Jamie Rubridge has put together for Cabinet. We're very grateful for all the support that we've had. And I know the leader wants, as said previously, that he hopes this will open up other avenues. Well, yesterday, as soon as the scrutiny decision was out there, we've had 2 phone calls, one from a mobile bike centre who wants to put up something at the skate park because it will join on to City of Swansea's new bike routes, and from someone who wants to measure the pollution from the environment centre. So people are already coming to us, and I think this is what the leader said. It will be a focus for other people to come into Swansea. So I know you've answered the questions. I just wanted to say thank you. And it's already proving that it's going to be very useful to Swansea as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Erasmus. That's appreciated. I'm sure the officers will appreciate your comments as well on that. Okay, was there anything from either of the cabinet members in response to that? I think the points had already been covered, as Mrs. Erasmus had said. Okay, if that's the case, thank you all very much for your questions today, and that concludes public question time. If I could ask all of our everyone to go back on mute, please, if that would be helpful, so that we can reduce any interference on the recording. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes public question time. We'll move to councillor question time. Are there any questions from any other councillors on this, please?
Councillor Linda Taylor-Lloyd has indicated, Leader.
Okay, Councillor Lloyd, would you like to come in? Councillor Taylor-Lloyd, are you able to come in?
Sorry, I muted instead of put the mic machine on. Yes, thank you for this opportunity, because I'm representing the people of Wales here. To go over the question very briefly that I asked at scrutiny, people are concerned. Let me just say again that everybody thinks it's a wonderful idea to have a skate park. They're just concerned about the positioning of it, and they wanted to know why it couldn't be put in Blackpill, where this is a destination for visitors, and there's a hub there already of excitement and people, you know, facilities and parking, and they are concerned, this is the people of Wales are concerned, that a site will not have the facilities, there might be disruption, noise, and parking problems there. So that was the question: would you consider it being moved to Blackpill? You've had that question already. Now, since the scrutiny, to go on to the questions now, if that's all right, can you hear me? One of the questions that came in was, sorry, can you hear? Or am I getting interference? You can hear?
You are breaking up a little bit, Councillor Taylor-Lloyd, but we can hear you.
You can hear me.
Councillor Taylor-Lloyd, you seem to have a bit of a connectivity issue, so it might be useful if you turned off your video, and that would help with the audio, if that's helpful to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Since the scrutiny meeting, I've had a couple of questions in. One was, why did the council not put its own review in for the sites? Why did they go to an outside body? That was one of the questions. And then the other question really is on safety. Will it be supervised because of safety, and has it been taken into account the flooding issues in Llanderw? Really, those are the questions.
Okay, I'll go to the cabinet members. Two questions there. One on safety, and the other one on flooding. And why did we not procure an internal report rather than an external report? So do the members pick that up? Who wants to go first?
Well, it was request. Sorry, Deputy Leader, do you want to go first?
No, carry on. It's okay.
Look, it was requested an independent report. That independent report was procured by the Mumbles Community Council, and the answers to all the questions are in the report. I know the report is rather long, 315 pages of it, but in the report it says how the site will be managed, how people will access and egress the site during construction, and Mumbles Community Council were the body that paid for and the independent report. The other question you ask is, why couldn't it go on Blackpill? Well, it could go on Blackpill, it could go on this site, or it could have gone on Untitled Park. But the independent report looked at the 3 sites and actually came back with the recommendation of the best site was the Swansea site, not the Blackpill site. The Blackpill site is still a good site, not the Underhill site, which the 3 sites were good. That's why that shortlist was made. But there has been a cost of having planning permission on the Swansea site. That is in existence. So if you were to move up, you talk about facilities, you're talking about a distance in the report of 350 yards up to Blackpill. And so therefore it would be time prohibitive to the Mumbles Community Council to have to then put in another planning applications for the Blackpill site. And it is the feeling of the independent report, and that's the officers who have prepared this report for Cabinet, is that the preferred option is the Swansea site. And I'm sure you've heard all this before, Councillor Tyler Lloyd, as a member of the Community Council. But that is the preferred option of the independent report of the officers who have looked at all the report, and I've never seen such an extensive report. And also with the consultation has come up that this is the preferred site for the people that want to enjoy skateboarding. Huge amount of replies from young people, and that's to be encouraged as well, that young people have participated in the consultation. I hope that does answer your questions, Councillor Tyler Lloyd.
Thank you, Councillor Francis Davis. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you.
I won't cover anything else Councillor Robert Francis has covered, but could I just particularly talk about the health and safety issues highlighted with regard to the highway implications? These were certainly addressed at the planning committee, and I can assure you that a full survey done, mostly what we would anticipate is a majority of users will come by foot and using the prom. The only and what things didn't want was a drop-off point or any stopping points on the Mumbles Road that would have created this safety implication. So what we are, one of the recommendations is that we will be putting a 1 metre hawthorn fence all the way around it, or will obviously discourage people from coming from the highway. And on regards to your concerns on flooding, would it also be addressed at the planning committee where we had a full review of the SUDs with particular site. So I can assure you as a member that these things have been looked at and have been addressed.
And Councillor Tyler Lloyd, I'll come back to you now, if that's okay. I was just going to say, in addition to what Councillor Francis Davis and Councillor Hopkins said, I think the point around, Blackpill and could more be done there. I know Councillor Francis Davis has had discussions with you around how the community budgets that the administration has made available to every councillor could be used in that area. But also, I know Councillor Francis Davis is keen to see enhancements to Blackpill and the area around there as part of the overall, upgrading of the seafront. And that is something that I know he's working hard on.
Thank you. Yes, I know. I'm grateful for the grant being sent to me for that improvement to the facilities, and we're working on that, and I'm really pleased, and I think that is going to be a wonderful thing to happen. Bear in mind that I know the answers to these questions, but I had to be seen to put these to you because people are coming to me and wanting to know, am I going to bring them to you? They can see now that I have brought this to you and they've heard it again. And of course, they haven't read all these pages, and they are concerned not only with dropping off of people to use this facility, but they're concerned that will there be some sort of almost like a lifeguard system where if there are accidents, that people will be able to be, rescued and first aid situations and that sort of thing. So that it's not just the dropping off at the site, it's the actual facility and where it's going to be safe to use for children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler Lloyd. I think you already raised those questions, and as chair, you know, I would have prevented you from asking if they were unfair. You have a right to come to this committee and represent your community. That is fine. So I think you've raised the questions. Now you've had the answers, and I know you've had them previously yourself. So
Yep.
I'll draw a close to councillor question time there then, unless there are any other councillors who wish to raise a question. Councillor Hopkins, do you have anything further to add before I do?
No, I'm just going to say we've got one more council question from Councillor Mark Child.
Mark Child, yeah.
Oh, apologies, Councillor Child.
Thank you, Leader. I've got three questions actually, two on the skate park and one on the social services item on the agenda. Shall I ask them all together or shall I ask them separately?
If you can do them one at a time, and I'll come back to you after each question.
Okay, I'll ask social service item 9 to Councillors Lloyd and King. This is a step forward in co-production, recognising we are doing with people, not to people or for people. And I praise the service users, carers and third sector for their involvement in bringing this strategy together. I'm sure the Cabinet members are very pleased in bringing this here today, but will they agree that co-production is a process and that it is in the implementation of this strategy that the true test will come? How it empowers people, how it will not be providing a service, a single service that shoehorn people in, but a service, many services, as there are people needing them. And is it not the case that when people have participated in designing their support, they are more motivated and outcomes are more likely to be better? And can they also say how they will be monitoring and embedding this co-production process going forward?
Okay, Councillor Lloyd and Councillor King, who wants to respond first, please?
So I go first. Yeah, can I thank
Yeah.
Councillor Child for the question, and also take this opportunity to thank him for his previous involvement in co-production strategy development as my predecessor as cabinet member for adult social care. So I know he's well informed and will be familiar with the process that has got us to this stage today. But I think the really important thing from my perspective is this is not a beginning and end process. This is just the start of an overarching process. Continuation of sorry, Leader, can I ask somebody to go on?
Yes, I think Councillor Tyler Lloyd, you are not on mute. If I could ask you to go on mute, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's a continuation and developing process, and as you say, I agree with all the points that you've raised. This is really about people, isn't it? This is not a normal policy or implementation that we traditionally come to know. And the last thing I would want is any sort of traditional statistical measurements where we come up with different measures that supposedly inform people and tell them what's happening. That's not what co-production is about. Co-production is very much about involving people, listening to people, not telling them what we think should be happening to them, but them telling us, and working to produce a strategy which will empower that. And the only way we really get real proof of achievement is by those people that are engaged with us telling us that we're achieving. So, there might be a bit behind the scenes where we can support that methodology in terms of some statistical evidence, but really the heart of this is people telling us we're achieving, people's lives improving, and us recording that and making sure that we learn and take that forward. So it's about people, the people involved in the co-production groups will decide the outcomes, they'll decide the achievements, not me and not officers.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Councillor King, anything you wish to add?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Well, thank you, Councillor Child, for the question. I agree with what Councillor Lloyd has said. I think it's really important, and it's a very pleasing report to bring to Cabinet. From the Child and Family Services perspective, I think we really do embed the voice of the child and young person in how we shape and deliver our services. And the strongest aspect of that is in the work with the Corporate Parenting Forum. And we've been co-producing our strategy and plan very much in partnership with young people and children who are care experienced. And it's been an interesting thing to do over the last 12 months with not being able to have physical meetings, but we found new and interesting ways to have those discussions with young people. And I think that's really important. The other really great thing is the document in the papers is quite a long document with the strategy, but we're in the process of producing an easy read and a young person friendly version, which will enable them to have something that they can read and be a bit more accessible to everyone. So, but thank you very much for the question.
That is available as well. The easy read document is available, so that's good progress.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Child, your second question.
Yeah, thank you very much for that answer. I wish you every success with the strategy. It's on item 12. I'd like to congratulate officers for the very thorough and positive report, and long, which if agreed today, makes the state-of-the-art skate park at Lloynderw a when, not an if. When the public were consulted at the various stages, such as planning and public interest notice and these proposals for the lease of the land, there was a bigger response, positive response to improving the facilities at this location than any other site, I believe. And much of that support come from young people. I mean, is this, to your knowledge, the biggest engagement and response to young people who often don't respond directly to the council that you have experienced?
Could I just...
Councillor Hopkins first, and then Councillor Francis Davis.
To be honest with you, I was quite, I must say, inspired by the amount of responses. When we normally go out for any response on public open space, it's very, very few and very often very negative. So I was absolutely delighted to see the response. I think it was some 148 responses, mainly from youngsters of positive responses. So yes, I can confirm this must be one of the most replied positive from people that I. So yes, I can confirm.
Councillor Francis Davis.
Yes, and it's great to see that young people are responding with a positive. There was well over about 130 odd, maybe 140 responses of a positive nature to it. I think there was 7 or 8 negative. So it's been an overwhelming response from the people, from the community that want to see this go ahead. So yes, and I think one thing that we've learned in a pandemic is that there's probably communications are that much easier to do now with people working on Zoom and Teams and other methods, and probably it's a lot easier for people even to attend meetings than to physically have to drive somewhere, park, and then come into a building. So yes, very good responses and to be welcomed.
And again, Councillor Child, just to add, I met with members of Gower College earlier this week for a session, and again, the skate park came up during that discussion with some of the young people, and in a very positive way.
Thank you, all three of you, very much for that response. I think it is inspiring, the amount of engagement there's been. My last question then is, and you know that there's been some frustration along with the support for the scheme about the time taken to go through this process. Other questioners have asked similar questions. And I know that there's been some opposition to this site from local Conservative councillors, as well as other sort of well-resourced individuals locally. Can you assure me that the time taken has been to make sure that everything has been evidenced, all options have been covered, and to ensure that all is legally and procedurally watertight, so enabling this scheme to proceed to its conclusion?
Look, the reply that the report is 315 pages long, as you know, well put together by Lewis Hines and from Jamie Rubridge, who have taken all the environmental impact assessments, the ecology reports, it's gone through the legal department to ensure that it conforms to everything that we got to look at. People do get frustrated with times. Local government can look as if it's bureaucratic, but we have got to ensure that we deal with everything with due diligence, because we are handing over an asset on the foreshore. It does take time, and I'm sure it is frustrating for the people that want to get on with it. But this is no different to any other process that we go through when we are dealing with public money. And I think it's only right that we do things in a correct process to save challenge at a later date. And so I'm satisfied that it has been handled correctly through the Estates Department, through the Regeneration, the Culture Department, and also our legal department. And hence the size of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Childs. Councillor Childs, I'm also mindful that I didn't go to Councillor Louise Gibbard, who's the lead on co-production, and obviously shares the portfolio with Councillor Pugh. So I was just going to give the opportunity for Councillor Gibbard or Councillor Pugh if there's anything they wish to add. It was remiss of me not to call you in at the time.
No, it's fine. I was going to come in when the item's on the sort of the agenda later on, and just echo what Councillor Lloyd and Councillor King said, that how pleased we are of this strategy, and was co-produced, so it's a really good example of what can be done, and excited to see how we can roll that out in other work across the council going forward. So thank you for bringing me in, but I was going to come in later.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Pugh, anything from you, or are you going to make your points later?
No, it's fine. Louise will speak. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Councillor Childs, for your questions. Are there any other councillors who have any questions for Councillor Question Time? If not, I'm going to bring that part of the agenda to a close. Okay, thank you. Now, given the significant interest both from councillors and from members of the public on the agenda today, on the agenda item to do with the proposed lease to Mumbles Community Council, I propose to move item 12 forward as the next item. So with that in mind, prior to bringing the cabinet members in, I'm going to bring in Councillor Black, who chaired the scrutiny committee doing the pre-decision scrutiny on this item. So Councillor Black, if you'd like to give your scrutiny feedback first, please.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Thank you for bringing the item forward as well. The scrutiny committee did look at this in some detail. They concluded that the report which is being presented to Cabinet today was very comprehensive, and the whole process has been very comprehensive. And the scrutiny committee are very happy to support the transfer of land, and to thank you for the opportunity to question it, and to also applaud the process as well, which we think has been very thorough.
Thank you, Councillor Black. That was very succinct. Appreciate it, and again, thank you. I was able to attend, obviously, the scrutiny, and I thought it was very, very good scrutiny meeting. So thank you very much for that and for the feedback. Okay, next I'll go to the cabinet members. So we've got Councillor Hopkins and Councillor Francis Davis. Councillor Hopkins, do you want to lead off on this one?
Yeah, could I first put on record my thanks to Councillor Black, particularly for the way that scrutiny was handled. I thought it was very professional and the right outcome. So I'd like to thank him for that. I also would like to thank Lewis Hines and Jamie Rubridge for their outstanding work in this. Right, I think it's the report itself speaks volumes. I've never seen such a report on an asset transfer. It's very thorough. It's also been through the planning process, and I'll be honest, as I've said in the questions, I'm really encouraged with the amount of support from our youngsters within Swansea, because as I said, it's not just a Mumbles Community Council project. This will benefit the people of Swansea. So I would congratulate Mumbles Community Council on their ambitious project here, and I really think it's right and proper that that this is the way forward, because I hope other community councils are able to access similar types of grants and going forward. It's far better this than talk about previously when I was involved with Mumbles Community Council. It was always talking about double yellow lines and parking enforcement. So it's really nice to see this coming forward. So I'm really excited by this 315-page document and this £350,000 spend on this city, because it will be a regional centre, and I got nothing further to add other than to thank all those involved, but particularly Mumbles Community Council for their vision. So I move the report.
You're on, Mike.
Apologies, Councillor Francis Davis. I call you in next. Apologies.
Look, you know, all this report is today, it's not judging whether we should have a skateboard park or not. This is about the community asset transfer. But I would like to thank Councillor Black for the way that the Scrutiny Committee did deal with this. And I'd also like to thank Jane Brewbridge as well and Lewis Hines. Nobody can say that it hasn't gone through the due diligence, that nobody can say that it hasn't been well thought out. Nobody can say that the community have not been consulted. And congratulate the Mumbles Community Council on ambitious plans to ensure that recreation is quite high up in the agenda with that community council. You know, not just the work that they're doing here, but the work that they've been doing. And we gave an asset transfer to the recently to the Underhill Park, where there's a very ambitious scheme going on there, and also the tennis courts in Langland. 3 very ambitious projects by a community council, and good luck to them on those projects. So I'm more than happy. I don't think there's any need to go to the report. This is well documented, and I'm sure everybody's read it. All 315 pages in detail, and I would move the recommendations, well, second the recommendation. They've been moved by Councillor Hopkins on page 167, and the recommendations 1, 2, and 3. And that, if there's any questions from anybody on the Cabinet from this report, I'm happy to answer them. I'm sure Councillor Hopkins is as well.
Thank you both very much for that. I don't see any hands up, but if there are any Cabinet members who wish to make further comments, more than welcome to do so. If there isn't, I'd just like to add before we go to the vote. I mean, obviously, I've spoken in different settings about my support for this scheme as well. I'd like to congratulate Mumbles Community Council as well for the vision that they've had on this, and you know, for the local members as well for pushing this. I know Councillor Childs has been active in doing a lot of support with Mumbles Community Council to progress this scheme. I think, you know, in terms of the work that we're doing as administration in the City Council to try and create a destination in Swansea, this is absolutely in line with that, around making sure that our bay offers lots of opportunities for people to enjoy when they visit Swansea, as well as giving a fantastic facility to the young people of Swansea to skate in a dedicated facility. I know Councillor Francis Davis, I referenced earlier, is looking at Black Pearl. He's looking at lots of other areas where we can enhance the offering for Swansea. The arena is on track, as people will know, to open later this year, providing a massive boost to our tourism economy. Skyline is proceeding in terms of the proposals for the facility on top of Kilvey Hill, and it is about, you know, enhancing our tourism offering and our sport, our leisure, and our destination offering in Swansea. So I'm very happy to see this go forward. I do think this is an ambitious programme by Mumbles Community Council, and I do wish them all the best in delivery of that programme. And as we've indicated in our answers previously, obviously, if we agree this today, we'll move as quickly as we can on the things that we need to do. But we know there is a heck of a job ahead for Mumbles Community Council and its partners to actually deliver these schemes, but we wish them all the best in their endeavours. Okay, if that's all, then Mr. Evans, if I can ask you to run the vote. Councillor Hopkins moved the report, Councillor Francis Davis seconded it. You have the recommendations there, so Mr. Evans?
Yeah, I've just launched the vote. If I can remind you that only the 10 Cabinet members should be voting, please. And remember to press submit after casting your vote. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. Have you all finished? I'll give you 5 more seconds. Okay, I'm closing the poll now. And we can see from that, that's 100% voted there. Let me just, belt and braces, if you don't mind, I'm just going to confirm for this one, because there are some people in the meeting that that only the eligible people should have voted. So let me just check on this item, if you don't mind. Sorry about the slight delay here. Yeah, I can confirm that only Cabinet members voted. In fact, I shall. There was, so that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much, and again, congratulations to Mumbles Community Council, and we wish you all the very best in the delivery of this scheme. Okay, we will now move to the next item. I'm aware that Councillor Rayner has an engagement, so again, with Cabinet's indulgence, I propose to move the local authority governor appointments item forward, and I'll go to Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, with the intervention of the Chief Executive, that 11 o'clock meeting may have been cancelled and is likely to be moved. So I'm happy to take this now if you wish, or we can revert to the normal running order.
No, happy for you to go ahead, Councillor Rayner, as soon as you're on it. If you're ready, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. This is item 8. Could I just draw your attention to the fact that the first documents that came out had an error? So if I could just check everyone is quite clear that in the list of schools, the original document referred first of all to Clyce Primary School. That should be Burleigh School. And so that has to be deleted. Any reference to Clyce Primary School should be deleted and replaced with Burleigh Primary School, where the governors Julie Palmer and councillors Chris Holly, Peter Black and Graham Thomas are to be added to Burleigh Primary School as LA governors. All the other schools, all the appointments stand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that correction, Councillor Rayner. Do you have the recommendations there, Councillor Rayner? I assume you moved those recommendations, yes? Okay, could I have a seconder, please?
Second.
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Evans, if we could go to the vote.
Yeah. Right, the vote has been launched. It should be, there you are. Are you okay if I close the poll, everybody?
Yep.
Yeah, so the poll is closed. And again, that's 100% voted there. And I'm just having a quick look at the, again, only councillors have voted, so that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all very much. We'll return now to the agenda item, which would normally be the most important item on the agenda, and I'm sure it is still. And I would call first Mr. Smith, please, to introduce, from a technical nature, budget proposals for 21 to 25, 26. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be as brief as I can, given timing. But I will, as usual, draw your attention to a number of matters in terms of the technical advice I wish to give Cabinet. I won't repeat what is in itself in the report, because you'll have all read the report, and I think the report is very clear in terms of the position, which is overall one of relatively good news in terms of money is available for you to consider as part of the start of your budget consultation exercise. In terms of the report structure itself, in section 1 as an introduction, it explains why we've got to where we've got to with the national context and what was a very late local government settlement for Welsh authorities, driven by some very late announcements in terms of the UK government. And indeed, that lateness is likely to continue all the way through. We will get into March, ultimately, where we now have the likelihood of a local government final settlement on the 2nd of March, a national budget on the 3rd of March, and leaving the best to last, Swansea Council's budget on the 4th of March. In terms of section 2, it's a narrative which explains how we've moved and seek to transition from Sustainable Swansea into Achieving Better Together. Section 3 sets out the broad strategy with the attendant risks and uncertainties that you face, like all councils in the midst of the pandemic. Section 4 is the bit I'm going to focus on, particularly in terms of the technical advice I give you, and in terms of financial update. Section 4.3, you'll see a paragraph in bold making clear that even with the assumptions I've made in terms of the technical advice, budgets are planned to grow by about £60 million over the next 5 years. I will focus just a little bit on table 1 with some of the assumptions. As is my wont as your Section 151 officer, I will be very blunt in terms of the advice I give. It's the advice as I see the technicals. That may lead to some further observations and comments from yourselves. The overall position in terms of table 1 is very, very clear, as I've indicated. It indicates that £60 million net invested into services is the plan over the next 5 years. The table has been changed a little bit in format. Under Sustainable Swansea, we tended to focus on what was going out of the budget rather than looking at predominantly what was going into the budget. And so effectively over the 5-year period, you've got a position which is £90 million worth of funded pressures, and about a third of it to come from proposed council tax from planned increases in future years, about a third of it from services, and a third of it from growth in revenue support grant and non-domestic rate redistribution, with a heavy emphasis on the early years. The assumptions are long and the notes are attached to guide you, but I would draw your attention to a number of matters, because I have made a number of material changes, even though the overall position hasn't changed as a whole. The pay award, I've put in a pay award of 1%. This is problematical for me as your Section 151 officer, because I don't know what the pay awards are going to be. You will be aware that the UK government has indicated they expect a period of pay restraint and a near pay freeze. There are a few difficulties with that. The pay freeze doesn't apply if you're on less than £24,000, and a very large number of our workforce are on less than £24,000. It is also the case that the UK government can't set local government terms and conditions. That'll be a matter for local government employers. And for teachers' pay, it's a devolved matter to the Welsh government to decide. There are likely to be some increases in national living wage, but they're probably likely to grow at a slower rate than previously assumed, given the state of the economy. In future later years, there are increased pension costs. I would remind you that you are currently benefiting from no increase in employers' pension costs for 3 years on the trot as a result of fantastic work done by my Treasury and Pensions team under the guidance of the Pension Committee. I have next advice to you on cumulative inflation, and I am making an explicit assumption that inflation will be relatively low. We will see what happens in due course. Newspaper headlines yesterday screamed headline inflation doubled, but it's from a whole 0.3% to 0.6%. Some of the future stuff to come through will depend very much on what happens with frictionless or not frictionless tariffs and trades. We then have a whole raft of proposals on capital charges. They're complex, they're clunky, but the important thing is twofold. One, that there is sufficient money built in all the way through to the peak position for 25-26. And the other important takeaway, which is referred to in the narrative in the report, is that I could, to some extent, be saying, oops, I've done it again, because you'll be aware that the first £90 million worth of borrowing was got away before the 1% penalty premium came in on PWLB borrowing. In November, the Treasury has removed that penalty rate, and I'll be looking to undertake all future borrowing without that penalty rate applying. The rest of the items provides for some small draw from reserves, some substantial one-off funding to revenue as part of the COVID response. This is entirely in line with the strategy you've adopted throughout the year in terms of giving targeted local support on top of all of the support from the UK government and Welsh government in terms of service-specific schemes and employment support schemes. You have a number of items in terms of levies which remain yet to be firmed up. They will be firmed up in due course, the Port Health Authority tomorrow and the Fire Authority by the middle of February. I will come back to Council Tax Support Scheme in a moment. You have the usual range of other proposals put through, which gives an overall position of, as I say, £90 million worth of pressures broadly, and 1/3 coming from each. There are two things I would need to further draw your attention to. The first is Council Tax Reduction Scheme. It is unfortunately the case that there have been some exogenous shocks, shall we say, to the system in terms of the amount that's been having to be spent on Council Tax Reduction Scheme. And whilst designed correctly to be local costs that fall to local councils and ultimately local taxpayers, I think there is a case to be made in terms of that impact of COVID, because we have seen from the performance management statistics, though not surprising in one sense, equally quite shocking, nearly 100% uplift in caseloads. And at the moment, all of that inability for some people to be able to pay council tax falls on those otherwise deemed able to pay council tax under the CTRS scheme. And the other biggie is the aggregate external finance assumptions. We've got this year a 3.94% indicative rise, which is the second best in a decade, which is great, but going forward there are likely to be issues. I don't think there is any commentator that doesn't think that there are a range of potential public sector real terms cuts and tax rises to come. I've deliberately laboured most of the points in that one. I'm going to speed up quite a bit in terms of the rest of the report in terms of technical advice. Table 2 summarises in the traditional Sustainable Swansea format what could happen and what has happened. I do accept it's a somewhat clunky table, and as we move from Sustainable Swansea into Achieving Better Together, I do hope it's the last time we have to put this table in this particularly clunky format. But I insist on it to paint a picture of what has happened in terms of the relative good news in recent years, but also what may come to pass in future years. And in that ilk, Table 3 sets out a number of assumptions over potential future aggregate external finance support to the council. It does just show how immensely sensitive it is to the overall assumptions around our spending power. Table 4, moving rapidly on, sets out the initial capital allocations under the local government block, and they are disappointing in isolation for local government. But of course, as you are well aware as a cabinet, there are very large amounts of capital schemes held by individual Welsh Government departments, and I expect there to be substantial announcements in due course on all of those. Section 5 sets out in more detail the service assumptions, and most importantly in Table 5, proposed savings of just over £8 million, which are modest in the context of recent years and modest when viewed in the context of the overall injection proposed into budgets. Table 6 analyses that in a slightly different way, but otherwise comes to the same position. If I draw your attention to Table 7, it sets out the position in respect of schools, and a number of us have met with both the School Budget Forum and head teachers and set out what the indicative proposals are there. And again, sizable sums going into schools, and this year sizable real terms sums going into schools as a result of the explicit assumptions I've made as a result of the quasi pay freeze announced by the UK government. So I think it's been received well by head teachers and the School Budget Forum. Section 8 brings it all together into assumptions over the share of investment and how it's to be funded from service savings, council tax, and the aggregate external finance increase. Those reading the report will know there isn't a reference to the overall level of council tax at this stage because of some of those uncertainties I referred to in Table 1 yet to be resolved. But it's clear if you've got your calculator out and worked out the overall yield increase, take away the tax base increase that council agreed in December, it is less than the planning assumption of 5%, and I'm sure there'll be still some time taken on that in due course. The reason I emphasise that is both UK government have assumed 5% increases for upper tier authorities in England, and broadly similarly, the Welsh Government has assumed up to 5.1% increases on council tax at standard spending. Those are guides, you're not obliged to follow them, but it does give you an indication of the planning context in which we are working. Section 6 sets out in normal format the assessment of risks, which includes some added COVID uncertainties, both in terms of timing and what other specific grant support may or may not come from the UK government and Welsh Government. Section 7 sets out the proposed consultation approach, which this year does need to be necessarily truncated, and it is part of the reason why I somewhat pejoratively refer to the budget as no surprises budget. Effectively, the MTFP you agreed last year, despite my changing a number of the assumptions, has not deflected from the broad path you were intending to take when you recommended as a Cabinet to Council last year. Section 8 sets out the proposed staffing implications, and again your approach, which is to seek to minimise the risk of any compulsory redundancies, and the presumption at the moment is that the numbers set out in Table 9 are both very modest and do not have any compulsory redundancies for next year. That comes with a caveat from me that directors are still responsible for balancing their in-year budgets, and there may be some proposals still being taken through. And it also has a caveat around schools. Schools make their own decisions individually. Although I've referred to a very substantial increase in the schools funding, it comes down to the individual decision on individual schools. The rest of the report is in very much the format you are used to. So that's a whistle-stop tour through. I would remind you, once I've handed over to you, Leader, that ultimately I'm sure you'll wish to comment on it, but there are 4 recommendations once you get to the point that you consider ready to move the recommendations. But I would hand over to your good self at this point, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for the technical run through there of the papers. And again, as I did at scrutiny yesterday, I'll repeat my thanks to you and your team for the amount of work again that's gone into this budget. I know you made the Treasurer comment yesterday that you know, in technical terms it's a boring budget, but I know it's been an incredibly challenging period for you and your team, given all of the additional aspects you've had to deal with in terms of budget variations because of COVID, and the additional help that your team is helping to get out to hundreds of businesses across Swansea as part of the support that's being issued by the government and Swansea Council. So again, thank you very much for all of that. I'd just like to focus on some of the headlines in terms of what you said, Mr. Smith. I mean, clearly the papers offer a picture whereby we know in the draft budget set by Welsh Government, we're looking at 3.94% settlement currently. That is represents the second best settlement we've had in around 10 years. It does afford us some additional cash to help departments and services, around £13 million derived from Welsh Government. But of course, if you dig into the papers, as Mr. Smith has said, you will see net £22 million extra proposed to go into services, providing a cash boost in real terms to all services across the council. That means more money into education, more money into social care, more money into all of the services that people rely on every day. The equivalent, I think, of around £4,000 additional per family in Swansea, if you were to cut it that way. In addition to that, obviously, we remain committed to trying to ensure that the balanced budget is achieved at the end of the year. And again, in terms of the monitoring we've been doing in terms of current pressures on departments, again, good progress is being made on that. And again, we had a good discussion about that yesterday at scrutiny, and we do anticipate a balanced or better position come the end of the year. Now, in addition to that, we obviously do have the twin challenges of both Brexit and COVID recovery to deal with, and that is something that I've already begun discussions with Mr. Smith and officials about, and I know Cabinet are extremely concerned as to how we can ensure a full package of recovery can be put together in support of the economy in the area and the services that we deliver. So I'm sure that is something we'll return to when we come to our final budget. As Mr. Smith also said, whilst the assumptions being made by both of the national governments are for 5 and 5.1% council tax, I know Cabinet are already minded and concerned about the additional pressures that residents and families are facing because of COVID, because of furlough, because of the loss of employment. And I know we will be discussing that and giving due consideration to the pressures that families are under in this particular year when we come to make our final decision on council tax. I just also would say, as I said in scrutiny yesterday, and I would repeat, we were challenged by Conservative members yesterday as to why there isn't a better settlement for Welsh Government. Well, I did point out to Conservative members that, of course, Welsh Government's budget is set by the amount of money available from the Treasury, but also the decisions that are taken in London to freeze public sector pay, to freeze the pay of thousands of key workers who have been on the front line, keeping people safe, nursing people in hospitals, looking after people in care homes, teaching and looking after our children in emergency care centres. All of those people who were expecting a pay rise this year, many of them are now not going to get that. I don't think that's a reasonable way to reward people who put themselves at risk and on the front line. And again, it was unwise, I think, of Conservative colleagues yesterday to raise this question without realising the context at which their colleagues had placed many key workers in Swansea. So I'm sure it's something we'll return to in due course. But again, as I've said before, Welsh Government are largely reliant on UK Government for its funding. I'm very pleased with the settlement this year for local government. It pushes us nearly on a par with health in Wales in terms of funding, which again is a position we've not had or seen previously. And again, you know, Swansea isn't the best in the pack in terms of the amount of money available in local government. We're about average, but we're not the worst either. And again, you know, given the financial stability and position we came into this year through prudent management of the council's finances, we are well placed to manage the council's finances through this unprecedented period of COVID in Swansea. So again, thank you. I'm more than happy to take comments from any cabinet members if anybody wishes to add anything before we go to the vote. I can't see any hands up there, but sorry, two yes. So I'll go to Councillor Rayner first and then Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Leader, and many thanks to Ben Smith for yet another really clear paper setting out all the pros and cons. I listen very intently, as everyone does, to the fact that we don't know quite what the future will bring, as we have to review the impact of COVID, and indeed we don't know how long the COVID issue will go on and on. But what I would like to do is thank the finance officers and my fellow Labour cabinet members for the fact that for the year 21 to 22, we are able once again to prioritise education and keep the funding for the delegated schools budget high and supportive for all our schools. This is especially, the whole budget is really good for schools and education. And I'd like to draw attention to everyone's the fact the support we're putting in for the ICT package, which is so important at the present time with blended learning, and also the need for the connectivity to work with our pupils on their well-being with live check-ins, live check-ups. And if we haven't got them, then I'm delighted to hear staff are going out and actually knocking on doors, stepping back 3 or 4 meters and having that conversation with the pupil. I'm also very pleased that the opportunities there is to continue our massive investment in school modernisation, new schools and upgrading of facilities. The Evening Post today gives 2 good examples, one at Bishopston Comprehensive, a 2-storey building, including new science labs and drama studio and extra classes, and also the amazing work, given the weather, of the whole steel frame going up for the new Welsh medium school at Tanalan near Clace. I think this is outstanding for our schools, and we've certainly done a lot better than many of our fellow local authorities. So once again, many thanks for prioritising education and schools. It's so important going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rayner. And yes, I mean, it's remarkable the progress that continues to be made on all of our major schemes. And, you know, the schools capital programme, as you quite rightly said, continues at pace, and it represents the biggest investment ever in better and new school facilities across Swansea. I'll go to Councillor Lloyd next and then Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Yeah, just a couple of brief points that I want to make. Firstly, can I say how absolutely furious I am about the public sector pay freeze that has been instituted by the UK government. It's an absolute national disgrace that the very people, and I'm particularly interested in those people working in our social care function, the people that have and continue to be in the front line at the height of a pandemic, being told that they're not valued enough to get a decent pay rise this year, absolutely shows what this UK government is about. I know it's very difficult for when these things are taken at a national level and not come down through the devolved budget, but I think it's something we need to continue to highlight. We need to continue to lobby in, and I'm very far from leaving this go as it currently stands, particularly in respect of our social care workers, but across the wider public sector organisation, which have had a real kick in the teeth for all their efforts and all their work. I would agree with Councillor Rayner. Really pleased that social care continues to be a prioritisation. And I was recently leader in a meeting with the Deputy Minister, which really shows how we have prioritised social care in Wales. Where I saw a graph where the spending, average spending of the over 65s receiving social care in Wales has maintained around £1,100 per year mark, where in England, we're seeing far more severe cuts to the local government, is around £850 per year. So a real gap developing in the prioritisation of adult social care. And I know in Swansea, we've continued to be at the forefront of that. I think you are right about council tax. You know, that it's a very difficult year for everyone, isn't it? And I think we really need to have that debate in where we do set our council tax levels, bearing in mind the advice that Mr. Smith has given. But we really need to be mindful of that and the impacts of the coronavirus on all our residents this year. And finally, I would echo the excellent work of our pension fund lead officers, Mr. Dong and Mrs. Cobb, who have done a fantastic job. And as chair of the pension fund committee, you know, they're not insignificant amounts of money that we don't have to divert now into the budget, and that can go into further investments. So Swansea Council is the greenest pension. It's doing as well as anything else, and we're achieving in really difficult times. So well done to the officers and the pension fund committee.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd, for those comments. I'll go to Councillor Hopkins next.
Yeah, I've got no intention of repeating what my colleagues have said, but I totally will endorse. What I would say, Leader, I would also like to congratulate Ben Smith for his, what he'd call a boring budget. I see it as a very ambitious budget in some respects, particularly on a capital spend. But it would be rather remiss of me not to thank you, Leader. You're lobbying for the Welsh Government to get this settlement. I'm under no doubt that that you have worked tirelessly to get to where we are. So I congratulate you on behalf of the Cabinet for all your efforts.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. I don't think we're done yet on the lobbying because we haven't got to the final budget, and both myself and Mr. Smith are continuing with those efforts, but the thanks are appreciated anyway. Okay, thank you all for your contributions there. It is an ambitious budget, and I didn't reference in my comments, which I did meant to do. Mr. Smith did say no compulsory redundancies this year, and again, you know, I would add to that, no compulsory redundancies. We hope no redundancies at all, and in addition, no further proposals to reduce services that haven't already been taken during the austerity period imposed upon us by UK government. So. You know, our aim remains, when the money is available to us, we will invest in services. That's what we intend to do. And just to extend Councillor Lloyd's point, if the UK government or the Conservative Party or whoever change the position on pay and we receive additional money for pay awards, we will pass those on to our staff immediately. So that is the position that we retain as a local authority. Mr. Smith, did you just want to take us back through the recommendations? Because you did pause before you handed over to me. Was there anything further you wanted to add before we go to the vote on the recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing else that I need to add other than to ask that you formally seek to move and then get a seconder for those recommendations if you're so content to do so. That's so that I don't do it as an officer.
Thank you very much. So I'm content to move the recommendations. Could I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Evans, if we could go to the vote.
You'll see the vote is up in front of you. I'll give you a couple of more seconds. Remember to press submit. I'm going to close the vote now. And again, you can see it's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evans. That is unanimous, as you say. So thank you, colleagues, for that. We'll now move to item 9 on the agenda, the co-production social care strategy. Okay, if I can hand over. Councillor Lloyd.
Okay, yeah, I'll lead on this, Leader, but I know that a couple of my cabinet colleagues may want to come in as well. listen, you know, I think this is a really, really welcome report for some of the reasons that were outlined earlier and highlighted in Councillor Child's questions. You know, and against the background of legalities and Social Services and Wellbeing Act and Wellbeing and Future Generation Act, you know, I think this is really something that we should be doing anyway. We shouldn't need laws to direct us in this fashion. And I think that we have been building a co-production strategy within social services over many years. And one of the things that's always struck me is that, you know, this is far from easy, isn't it? Co-production can mean different things to different people. And so I'm really pleased that we've pulled this group together, the co-production implementation group of our residents, of some of the people that have real interest and passion in being involved in decisions, and building up what we've seen is trust, is equity and honesty through the discussions, which has led us and got us to this document and this plan, this strategy, whatever we call it, that we've got today and we're presented today. You know, we hope that it's given people a voice. Our young people, our children, our adults, our unpaid carers, all these groups have been given an opportunity to contribute and lead really in formulating this document, because it's really important not only that we have the right outcomes for these individuals, but it really forms a preventative strategy as well, which in the long term, you know, can help people stay in their own environments, support themselves, and really help with independent living going forward. So it's all about recognising that, you know, it's not a consultation, it's not an engagement strategy as we might have expected it in the traditional sense of the word, but a really person-led, people-led engagement resource that has got us to this paper today. As I said, you know, co-production does need some guidelines, I guess, some engagement strategies, but again, it's really about those people that are engaged in this, developing this rather than being told, you know, what they should be doing. I think we need the plan outlines that, you know, recognising that co-production can cover lots of things, but also listening and understanding when it's not working and when it's not making a difference, and not carrying on for carrying on's sake. So that listening part of it and that honesty is really important in us making the adjustments as we're going along, because this really is you know, a strategy that needs to be modified. It's a living, working strategy, and that grouping is really important to making sure that we continue to outline that. It won't be used in all cases, and the document outlines some technical legal instances where it might not be appropriate, but it has to be a really good reason, in my view, why we won't use a co-production strategy in the future going forward, and making sure that we have as much empowerment, engagement, solutions, and better outcomes that we can possibly have to make daily living as best as it possibly can be for some of our most vulnerable residents. So I'll move the report as it stands, and I'm sure some of my cabinet colleagues will come in and add their voice to it. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Gibbard.
Thank you very much. I don't want to repeat too much of what Councillor Lloyd said or what was said earlier in terms of the questions. But yeah, I think Councillor Lloyd summed it up really by emphasising that co-production is all about trust, equity and honesty, and I think that's been at the heart of producing this strategy. And I'm looking forward to seeing us apply the principles of co-production and do more around co-production going forward, because it's all about making the best decisions for our residents. And who better to tell us what those best decisions are than the people involved in that themselves. So I really wanted to give a big thank you to all the officers involved in creating this strategy, and particularly the members of the Swansea Co-Production Network and other residents who were involved. And you can see throughout the strategy their quotes and the photos of the engagement that took place, and I think everyone agreed it was a really, really positive process. So yeah, I think we're really moving forward with co-production. A lot of the members of the network are now part of some of our policy development committees, and it's really good to see those principles apply across the council. So very happy to support this report and going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbard. Are there any other cabinet members who wish to speak? Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm really pleased to see this report at this instance of time. I think it's really urgent that we constantly review where we are on co-production. The report comes in strictly related to the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, but it applies just as well to the Additional Learning Needs and Tribunal Act, which of course makes it very clear this is not just an education policy. The statutory guidance does not refer to the education departments. It refers throughout to the local authority as a total supporting unit. We have been working closely with parents for a number of years, especially those with additional learning needs, to actually establish what is needed at each instant of time in the development of children and in supporting families. And the process is very important. It is not just having another committee meeting or another board. It's constantly evolving, especially where children are involved. What's really suitable at age 3 isn't going to be the same requirement at age 13 or 23, all of which come under the ages of the Additional Learning Bill. And it's really important that parents and officers of the council and the third sector get together to listen to each other's stories, to make sure that we don't revert to just listening to the few very vocal and very talented people who often have dominated groups in the past, but we do try and make this a very individualistic service as best as we can. Very timely. I think we'll learn lots of lessons. As Councillor Lloyd has said, this is not just for social services. It can be used across a whole range of activities that the council is involved in. And as Councillor Gibbard said, the essentials are trust and equity. And we're still a long way to go in working out what we mean by equity, because we too often use the phrase equality, which doesn't actually apply in many cases. It's got to be equity for as many of our residents, especially our children and young people, as possible. Really happy to support this, to see how it plays out and to learn from the experiences of it.
Thank you, Councillor Rayner. Are there any other cabinet members who wish to comment on this report? If not, thank you. I'll come back. Councillor Lloyd, remind me, did you move the recommendations? Just checking. If not, give you the opportunity to do so now.
Yeah, I think I moved it, Leader, in my comments.
Oh, okay. Okay, could I get a second there, Councillor Gibbard? Perhaps do you want a second? Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Evans, if we could go to the vote.
Yes, the vote is there, Chair. I will just look to close the poll. Okay, I'm closing the poll now. Yeah, you can see that's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. That is carried. We'll now move to the next item on the agenda, which is the proposed appropriation of Bryn House, 78 Walters Road. Yeah, Cabinet Member, please.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Could I don't want to upstage my colleague, Councillor Andrew Lewis, who's got, I must say, very ambitious plans going forward with Council House building. This is very much an enabling role on my behalf to try to carry on with them ambitious plans. So all I would like to say is I'm very happy to move this report today and hand over to my colleague, Councillor Andrew Lewis.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to Councillor Hopkins as well. Cabinet will recall that Welsh Government awarded us £5.6 million for the Welsh Government COVID-19 homelessness and Housing Related Support Services Phase 2 Capital Grant. This is part of that spend to deliver up to 100 additional homes and much needed social and mental health support to homeless people. This particular scheme will mean 4 additional apartments in the existing building and also 4 pre-constructed passive house pods within the grounds. This delivers our Always a Bed pledge and also helps us tackle fuel poverty. I want to thank Councillor Hopkins for his asset management and the opportunities that arise from that, because this is not just about spending the Phase 2 funding. This is not just about providing the 100 additional homes. This is about us maximising every opportunity that we can to deliver affordable and social housing in areas where we have very little land opportunities, particularly in Swansea West and the Gower. And this is about us delivering as an administration our wider ambition to deliver more affordable and social housing across the city and county of Swansea. So I want to thank Councillor Hopkins, and if Councillor Hopkins is moving the report, it would be my pleasure to second the report, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Lewis. Yes, I'll come back to you in a second. Are there any other Cabinet members who wish to comment? Okay, I don't see any. Okay, so Councillor Hopkins, if you'd like to move on, and I'll go to Councillor Lewis for second.
So move the report.
Very happy to second, Leader.
Thank you both very much. Mr. Evans has launched the vote, so I could ask you all to cast your vote, please.
Okay, I will close the poll now. And you can see that's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Evans, and thank you, colleagues. That is unanimously carried. We'll move then to the next item, which is item 11, the Bus Emergency Scheme 2, BES 2. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for allowing me to bring this report forward to Cabinet today. We are looking for approval by Cabinet for this Bus Emergency Scheme 2, and it's referred to in the report as BES 2. Welsh Government has already provided support to transport operators right across Wales throughout the pandemic, and this was recognised at the very beginning of the initial lockdown, where obviously income to bus operators disappeared overnight, effectively, and it was recognised by Welsh Government and others that we would need post-lockdown, and when we come out the other end of COVID, we obviously would need the infrastructure and these transport operators there for us to help us with our, the economy regrowing after COVID. So it is vitally important that Welsh Government put in support mechanisms and schemes to keep them afloat effectively and keep them able to operate. So the Welsh Government provided a range of support. It started with BES 1, which was the first of these support measures, and that was implemented in July 2020. That was then followed by BES 1.5, which is in August 2020, and these programs were all designed to provide short-term targeted support to all our transport operators to help them through, because obviously nobody knew at the time how long lockdown and how long COVID would be around. BES 2, however, is different in that it's designed to provide longer-term support for operators up to a maximum term the end of July 2022. And that is to use, while this support is in place, it's going to offer Welsh Government, Transport for Wales, local authorities and operators will look to develop a reference network that will provide a range of benefits to communities, multi-operator ticketing, for example, an operator signing up to an economic contract with its principles of fair work, health, decarbonisation, skills and learning. Also, a partnership with a clear set of obligations and shared standards, which is something I'm sure we would all welcome. All of these will lead to a transport service that will better meet the needs and demands of our residents. To date, as a region, we Cabinet members and heads of service do meet every quarter It's an informal meeting. It's called a Regional Transport Forum. This report and this proposal was put to us, and that was accepted there. Obviously, it's a non-binding agreement, but I just want to reference that because in principle, we expect that not only are we asking Swansea here, the Cabinet today, to approve this in Swansea, this is being rolled out this month through all 22 authorities. And early indications are that this will be accepted by, although I can't preempt what other authorities will do, but the expectation is that all other authorities are going to accept it, because it will lead to the type of partnership arrangements we want with transport operators going forward. Is something we've been looking for and working towards for a number of years, and this truly will give us the opportunity to develop a transport system that does meet the needs of the people that we represent and the citizens of Swansea, and to make sure that the communities that are meant to be served, because hopefully this new scheme will lead to more emphasis put on service and less emphasis put on profit. So that's the intention, the hope coming out of this. Therefore, Chair, I'm happy to move that the 4 recommendations on page 88 are accepted by Cabinet. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thomas. Is there anybody who has any comments or questions for Councillor Thomas? If not, could I seek a seconder then, please?
Happy to second.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, if that's all, we'll move to the vote then. Mr. Evans, if you could launch.
Yeah, you can see the vote in front of you. I'll close the poll. I'm getting a bit quicker now, given you're getting more proficient. So I'm closing the poll now. And you can see the results as unanimous with all 10 for.
Thank you very much, colleagues. That is carried. We've already dealt with item 12, so we'll now go to item 13, which is exclusions of the public. The legal officers outlined the reasons for that. Again, can I ask you to show your agreement that we accept the legal officer's recommendation and go into private session?
Yeah, happy to move.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll wait for Mr. Evans to confirm that we are in private session, and then we'll proceed to item 14.
You stop recording.